Welcome back to the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. We just finished up talking about the NBA games from last night. Now we are going to be switching gears to the comments that Joel Embiid made yesterday in the press conference that he had. It was the first time that he has spoken to the media since he left for the past month with the injury after he got surgery. And it was clear that his expectation is to play for the 76ers, and that is regardless of what seed they end up being when the playoffs come around. So that is as far as him playing this season, that is, and potentially trying to make a playoff push. I think that this has become a little bit of a contentious debate of whether or not Embiid should come back. I think that when this initially happened, it was before the trade deadline, and my thoughts were they have tons of expiring contracts. They should try and load themselves up to potentially be contenders for next season and be all in. Embiid has struggled with injuries through the course of his career pretty much the entire time, and I don't think that this is the year for the Sixers to become a contender. I think that there are a clear handful of teams that are better than them in the Celtics and the Bucks, and then even in that middle ground, I think that the Knicks would probably beat them in a series. I think that the Heat would have a very good chance of beating them in a series. And I think that the Cavs would be a close one. But obviously all of this depends on how healthy Joel Embiid is. And after having a serious injury this year and understanding the history of how he has played with injuries, how it's been every single season pretty much of his career, the likelihood that the Sixers are coming out of the East, let alone winning the finals this year, is pretty low. But the organization has seemingly been committed to still making a push this year, which while I disagree with for the most part, I also do understand the reality of Joel Embiid he's not going to play anywhere near as long as LeBron James, especially not as effective as LeBron has through his career into season 21. Joel Embiid is currently 29 years old. He will be turning 30 in a couple weeks. And I think that, he is currently technically in the middle of his prime. He was on pace for historic heights in this season, was probably on his way to an MVP based off of the offensive output he was producing. And now you're asking him to wait until he's 31 to make this playoff push. He's still yet to go to a conference finals. And I think that he probably, to a little bit of a degree, also has maybe thought about the fact that he's not trying to play for, until he's in his mid to late 30s. There's a very good chance that he understands sort of the reality of his situation. He is a 7-footer who has dealt with a lot of injuries, and can you blame him if when he's older he wants to actually be able to move around without pain? So that's all speculation. I definitely don't want to come across like this is something he's openly insinuated, but just a possibility perhaps. And he said regardless of the seeding, he wants to come back for the 76ers this season. The Sixers are currently the 5 seed in the Eastern Conference. Now, in that sort of 4 to call it the 8 seed, there is a very close difference between each team, where the Knicks are 35-25 and the 8th seeded Heat are 33-26, just a game and a half back. So these standings are changing every single night. But for the 76ers here, I do worry about them a little bit because they did have a brief spark there. They had a big win against the Cavaliers right after the trade deadline that looked nice, and Buddy Hield was phenomenal in that one. But they are just 3-7 in their last 10 games, and I don't know if they really have it on either end to be able to carry this out. And I think that teams like the Magic, like the Pacers, like the Heat, all have a very good chance of surpassing them in the standings. If I were to bet one way or another, if the Sixers are going to be a top 6 seed versus a play-in team, I would lean on the side of them being a play-in team. And here's the thing is, I also, if Embiid has the fire that he wants to go out there and he wants to play, especially after a little bit of buzz this offseason that he might not be happy in Philadelphia, if you are the front office that is telling him, I know you want to go play, but you can't, I feel like that could be a little bit of risk of ruffling the feathers there, potentially hurting the relationship. And for as much as that was sort of talked about during the off season here, what if they shut him down for the rest of the year and he gets upset and does openly request a trade? Because I think that we are entering a point here where Embiid, he has the MVP, he has the All-Star, he has the All-NBAs, he has the All-Defensive teams, he has the scoring champs, he is incredibly accomplished from an individual standpoint to the point where he's going to be a Hall of Famer. But for him, I think that there is a level of he wants to win a finals now, and that seems to be something that has sort of weighed on him heavily at times, at least through the times that we've seen him talking to the public, is that he is really committed to winning right now. And if they shut him down, although it might be the better thing for them if the team's mindset was to go all in on next season, maybe you upset Embiid to the point where he's so fixated on winning that he requests out. Now, the Sixers will have a lot of cap room in this offseason, so there is a very strong chance that they could go out and potentially find a max contract caliber player out there. I don't know the free agents off the top of my head. I know Paul George is one of them. I know that assuming LeBron James does not pick up his player option, he will be one as well, which would be a very fascinating experiment there. But I don't know if he is going to be leaving the Lakers. It doesn't really seem that way. So I don't know. The point is, they have the money to go and try and pay a star, but I'm not sure how much true star talent there is that would be a difference maker. I'm looking at the list now. It's LeBron, Paul George, Klay Thompson, Tobias Harris finally, James Harden, Pascal Siakam, who's probably sticking with Indiana, Drew Holiday, Gordon Hayward, Kyle Lowry, the list goes on there. DeMar, I suppose, is an interesting option there as well, but all in all, just not really superstar talent that I think would fully elevate the 76ers to winning a championship. So, I mean, the Knicks were a destination. I mean, they're always a destination that's talked about. But they are a team that was potentially rumored to be a landing spot for Embiid if he ended up being unhappy there. I'm not sure what their cap situation is like right now, but knowing that Klay Thompson is going to be a free agent, I mean, if there's any way they could make a deal work there, they have a Wiggins contract that they are likely going to move off of in Golden State. They move some stuff to go get Joel Embiid, the Warriors do. I mean, that is something. And again, now at this point, I'm just speculating potential trade destinations, and that's not really what the point of this is. It's more so to fixate on the 76ers, but it's just sort of the conversation that also flows off of whether or not you are going to make this decision and potentially upset Joel Embiid. So in terms of should he return for the playoffs, I think it would be better for himself from a health perspective and for the 76ers as a franchise if he were to sit out the playoffs, but that doesn't seem like it's going to happen, and I think that on both parties, they're just going to have to live with the consequences. And for the Sixers, I mean, if Joel Embiid really does feel like he's healthy enough to play, who are you to really deny him that opportunity? Because no, I don't think that they will be coming out of the East, but it's not like you're in a situation like the Mavericks were last year where they shut down Luka and Kyrie down the stretch of the season because they were they were in that 9 seed, 10 seed range where they had a chance to not even make the playoffs, get into the lottery, and they do so, and it worked out because they were able to get into that top 10 and draft Derek Lively. The 76ers are currently 5.5 games ahead of the 9-seeded Bulls and 7 games ahead of the 10-seeded Hawks. So it's not going to happen that they are going to fall out of the playoff picture altogether. At that point, might as well give it your best shot. I feel like this is also a 76ers franchise that, I mean, we saw Joel Embiid is literally called the process. What was the process before Joel Embiid was drafted and he was good? The process was losing as many games as possible year after year. And I think that it led to some really negative culture there in Philadelphia. And I think that that's part of the reason why it was so hard that one day they feel like they just have enough talent. It's like, okay, it's time to win now. And immediately they're expected to be a top caliber team. Now, they've had some very talented rosters and they've lost to some very talented teams as well. So and again, with the fact that Embiid has been injured as much as he has, we haven't really had a chance to see how this process works out in its entirety come the playoffs. But I think that it also just goes to show that if there is going to be a franchise that is in the realm of contention right now that could be hurt by trying to not go all in, it is the 76ers. And I'm sure that a lot of fans, I mean, I'm actually curious what Philadelphia fans feel when it comes to this situation as it currently stands, because expectations from the Sixers fans I have talked to is that they are very low and they are not expected to be necessarily real threats. And I think that was, partially damaged even after seeing the collapse against the Celtics in Game 6 last year in that second round matchup. And then to expect everybody to be in on it coming into this year with the injuries that Embiid has dealt with, I can't imagine the level of faith is all too high. But again, I don't know. It's just one of those things where it's an easy debate for people on the outside to, say, well, you're not going to win anyways, so what's the point? But I do think that there is an extra level of politics almost that takes place, and the behind the scenes stuff and some of the bigger implications of just saying, we're not a top 2 seed in the conference, might as well not try. Because you play the games because something may happen, and maybe you do come out and you shock a Celtics team for the first time in this iteration of the Boston-Philadelphia matchup, or something along those lines. Likely or not, you have this generational player in Embiid, and I don't know, again, the risk is further injuring him, but if he's 85-90% healthy, I can absolutely understand at least walking into the playoffs saying it's go time. And if you catch a whiff of Embiid is really struggling right now, I'd shut it down then. But I would definitely be open to them entertaining the idea of trying, again, especially based off of sort of the context of where this Philadelphia organization has been over the course of the past decade or so. But that is all we have time for on this subject. We are going to be taking our second break, and when we come back, we will be talking some NFL as the draft approaches, and there is a lot of buzz around these quarterbacks. I want to look back at the 2021 class that sort of became an underwhelming group and reflect on where things went wrong for a lot of these players. So stick with us, and we will be right back.